Welcome everyone to the Bridal Workshop, Season 1, Episode 2. I have the pleasure of having the amazing Debbie Ringo on the phone. How you doing, Deb?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing amazing. So, Debbie, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have been in business for about 5 years. I am a wedding and portrait photographer. I am located in Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is about halfway between Richmond and D.C. But I do frequently travel for sessions and weddings. I actually travel for more sessions than I do local sessions. So I'm pretty much East Coast and beyond. And my main focus in my business is really empowerment, and I really try to boost self-esteem for women is kind of my main focus.
Wow, so you got a lot going on. Not only do you do weddings, but you also do family portraits, correct?
Yes, I do family photography, couple photography, such as anniversary sessions, and then I also do boudoir photography. So kind of don't really specialize in one thing. I kind of do it all over the place.
All right, so how long have you been a photographer?
So I have been doing photography for now about 8 years. It's been a legal business for about 5 of those 8 years.
All right, so why did you decide to become a photographer?
So I actually, before I became a full-time photographer, I worked in the emergency room as a EMT, and I worked night shift, and it was a trauma center, and obviously it was a very stressful, overwhelming job. So I went from having something, when I first people found out that I did photography just kind of on the side as a hobby, people started offering to, pay me to take family pictures for around like the holidays. So I was like, yeah, sure, like definitely no problem. I can totally do that. And I enjoyed it so much. And then I realized that I was making money and like I had a potential of, turning this into something more serious. And, going from a job that you were getting yelled at and hit and stressful and, just constantly emotionally draining. And then having another job where you actually were making people happy, it just was, a totally easy decision to maybe think, okay, I think I want to focus on this instead of pursue nursing, which is what I was in school for. I was actually in college for nursing when I decided to quit and just do photography.
Wow, that's awesome, Deb.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I'm very thankful though because my business would not be what it is today if it wasn't for my former coworkers when I worked in the emergency room. They really really helped me get this business off the ground, and actually a lot of them are still like very loyal clients to this day.
So Deb,
Yes.
I've created this podcast because I really want to get to the heart of what couples or anybody in the wedding industry for that matter should really look for when
Yeah, absolutely.
when hiring their vendors. Now, being that I'm getting married, right, in the next few months, I mean, we've ran into so many different photographers. I mean, it seems like the industry is saturated with photographers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that something that you see as well in the industry? Whole bunch of
Yeah,
photographers?
for sure. So, actually, I got engaged 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
So,
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah. So I got engaged 2 weeks ago, and I've already experienced the same thing, and it really just in 2 weeks has really helped me kind of realize like how we can better be serving our clients. So photography is very saturated. This is a day and age where everybody wants to be a photographer. It's definitely something I feel like a lot of people are interested in. I think it's so great. I think people need to realize there's such a huge difference between amateur and hobbyist photographers and professional photographers. When it comes down to it, it's, we can all have the same gear and we can all have the same skill level. We all know what settings we need to have for lighting occasions. the only thing that's going to separate yourself from the other photographers is your personality. And you know, I really found that there are things that you do to kind of set yourself apart. And I noticed that just within 2 weeks of trying to find venues for my bridal shower and you know, stuff like that, I've realize what sticks out to me and what doesn't stick out to me. So I think personality is definitely something that you should look for in your photographer. And I actually tell all of my bride and grooms this when I meet with them for their consult. When I sit down with my bride and grooms for their FaceTime consult or their phone consult or even in person, I always am very honest with them and I tell them, look, you know, my pictures might be great to you and you might like my prices, but if you don't like my personality, we are not going to be a good match. And everybody's personality is different. So there might be a photographer out there that you absolutely love and you love their work, but once you sit down with them, you might realize that you may not like mesh very well with their personality. So for me, I'm super outgoing and really talkative, as you can tell. So a bride and groom, they may want somebody that's a little bit more like reserved and kind of a fly on the wall. I would say to them, like, make sure that's the personality trait that you want. I also think responsiveness is something that you should really look for. I have really ran into this over the last 2 weeks. I had no so constant vendors to wait 4 to 5 days to respond to a bride. And by that point, I'm no longer interested in their services. So I think that you need to make sure that you find somebody that can really, you know, it doesn't have to be within an hour, but like within 2 days, I feel like you should be receiving responses from your photographers or your vendors and really answering your questions and wanting to talk to you. I ran into a lot of vendors who've just been kind of rude, like sent me one brochure over without even like congratulating me on my engagement. And that really made a difference when I was thinking about who I wanted to hire. But so personality, responsiveness, obviously your skill level and your experience, I think that, you know, you need to know that your photographer hasn't just done style shoots or, you know, that they've done actual weddings and actually been in real wedding scenarios, not just second shooting, not just style shoots. Like, you want to make sure that, you know, when we're an hour late, we know what to do. I know how to handle it. Which I don't think somebody that doesn't have the experience, they may not be able to handle it as well.
So Deb, you said a lot there, right?
Yes, I know. I told you I talked a
lot. No. It's good because, you know, I really want to get down to, you know, the nitty gritty and just the reality of what couples should look for. So there's a couple of things you said. You said gear.
Yeah.
You said personality, and you also said amateur photographers and professional photographers. So I want to talk about the gear a little bit, right? So, I mean, I'll tell you from my experience, a lot of times when I'm talking to couples, like, they really don't care about the type of equipment that I have. Like, I've never had a couple ask me, so, yeah, what kind of speakers do you have? You know what I mean? But I know that the gear is important, and obviously they want to make sure that you have good working gear. But you know, it's interesting that you said gear. So if I'm a groom looking to hire you as my photographer, right? What's like almost like a standard professional camera that a professional photographer
should
would have?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do think that gear is important. However, I don't think that it should be a deciding factor. So I know some photographers that shoot on older cameras, or maybe it's like iPhones. Like, as soon as you get one camera, there's always a newer camera that comes out. So that's like me saying I had the iPhone 6S Plus, but there's the iPhone 10 out now. That doesn't mean my iPhone 6S Plus is horrible. You should make sure you know how to use it. So I do say that, you know, with the cameras, when people ask me, oh, what kind of gear do you use? A lot of times I can tell them exactly what I use, but they don't really understand it, which I feel like it's not, you know, it doesn't really help them make their decision. What you want to see more so is that they have gear that can handle low light. So some cameras that are more for like your amateur photographers, they don't handle low light as well. So if I'm in like a really dark reception space, if they don't know how to use flash, or they don't have a camera that can hold, that type of low light scenarios, then you're kind of screwed in that environment. So you really want to see that it may not help you as much to ask them what type of camera they have, because you're going to have no idea what that means. But you want to see more examples. Can I see examples of you shooting in a low light situation instead of beautiful sunset or brightly lit windows? And that's what you're going to want them to have good gear for.
Wow, that's good. That's good. I didn't even know about low lights. I'm like, what are you talking about? Low lights. Well, we're definitely gonna get to the lighting, right? So, how do you differentiate between an amateur photographer and a professional photographer? And the reason why I ask that is because, you can, if you're an amateur photographer, you can take a picture and go home and do some edits and call yourself a professional, right? So what do you think, in your professional opinion, what separates an amateur from a professional?
Yeah, so, I do know a lot of amateur photographers that are super talented, and they have a great eye, and they have a great portfolio. However, what differentiates them between a professional business is they may not pay taxes, they may not be legally registered as a business, they may not be sending contracts out. I go through this with people, like friends of mine, on a weekly basis, and I tell them, if they can't afford my services, or they can't, they're just looking for more of an amateur package, I always say, it doesn't matter who you go to. Like, I would rather you go to a cheaper photographer and still send me their package, their contract, so we can make sure it's okay. I've had so many situations where people hire, aka, they pay them $100 or something to take pictures, but no contract is ever signed. So what happens is these people, they give money to this amateur photographer, and they never get anything in return. And then they can't they can't say anything because they didn't sign a contract. So with a professional photographer, when my clients hire me, they receive a brochure, and then they receive a contract, and they receive a invoice. So everything that we do is on that paper. It says the price, it says what they're receiving, it says worst case scenario, it says if we have a terrorist attack, it says if we have an avalanche, a blizzard, whatever it happens, it goes over what's going to happen in situations. If I were to get sick or have a coma or be in the flu or break my leg, it goes over how they get their money back. And with an amateur photographer, you're just not getting that level of professionalism, and you're kind of in a really bad spot if you give them money and you have nothing to hold yourself up against it.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So you also mentioned skill level, right? Which I think is extremely important. So what do you think? Well, what skills should couples be looking for when hiring?
So this is something that I feel like newly has become an issue in our industry, and I don't think anybody that's not in our industry has any clue about it. So this is a really good question, Jean. So in our industry, there's something called styled shoot.
Say that again? It's called what?
Styled shoot. It's called a styled shoot, STYLED shoot. What it is that a photographer finds two models, whether they be a real couple or they just be a fake couple. They put together stationery, a gorgeous table setting, a gorgeous location with other vendors, a florist or a calligrapher, whatever. We create this most perfect environment, and then we take pictures with that environment. And then they put it on their portfolio. So what happens is we go to their website and we see, oh, wow, this gorgeous wedding, this gorgeous couple, gorgeous centerpieces. If they're doing that wedding, that means they can do my wedding, which is totally not accurate. Style shoots are great because it does help you get great practice doing detail shots, practice posing couples. You think of it as like a fake wedding almost, like you're doing like a fake wedding to take pictures of. But what it is that couples think that they have all this experience shooting weddings, when really they aren't shooting real weddings. They're shooting like portfolio things. So when it comes to an actual wedding day where you don't have a gorgeous location, you don't have perfect centerpieces, you don't have models as your couples, like professional, models that know exactly how to pose and where to look, and they don't know how to handle a real wedding. And I always tell my couples, like, it's okay to ask a photographer to send you an actual wedding, or to sit down with them and to actually look at a full wedding, because you want to see them have shooting a actual wedding versus just down shoots and portfolio sessions. And it's totally okay. I mean, I think, with Jean, if if you and Jen ever, if you guys wanted to see my work, I would want you to look at an actual wedding versus just, a few highlights from the season.
So, wow, I didn't know this. So,
yeah.
So a photographer can actually stage a wedding and make it look like it's a real wedding, and the couple looking at the portfolio doesn't know if this was
they
actually
might think
a real.
That it, and some shoots have great perks as if to a photographer. It helps us pose. It helps us show what type of wedding we might want to shoot. Like if I want to attract more boho couples or more bohemian inspired couples, I would want to do a portfolio session to kind of show that flavor and taste that I wanted more couples to be attracted to. Which is fine, but style shoots are great. You just want to make sure that's not the only thing they're shooting. You want to make sure that they actually are shooting real weddings, not just a fun shoot.
All right, so let's go back. Let's go back and talk about skills for a little bit, right? And I can only relate it to what I do as an entertainer. So in my line of business, being a professional wedding DJ, I have to work on my mixing skills. I have to work on my emceeing skills. I have to work on presentation, time management. These are skills that I'm always trying to work on and perfect and to master. Are there specific skills in the photography industry? Like, are there certain classes that you take?
I think so. When you shoot in manual, it basically means that you are choosing the exact settings on your camera for the scenario. So you have, ISO, aperture, shutter speed, which is a whole other, conversation. But you need to know basically how to calculate what settings you need for certain environments. So it comes, I know we're going to discuss lighting eventually, but you have to practice with lighting. For me this year, my goal is to really practice my flash skills. While I know how to do flash settings for receptions and basic things like that, I would love to get into more of different sparkler things and different things with fire and fireworks and stuff like that, it's great. You don't really know you need it until it's actually at a wedding. And I think that you should always be practicing these skills, but lighting, you really have to know how to handle your lighting. You're not always going to have a super bright room with tons of windows. You might have a church with orange wallpaper and yellow lighting and trying to make your bride not look like a pumpkin. And that's just the honesty of what a lot of wedding venues, they might be beautiful, but they also might have yellow light bulbs and green wallpaper.
Wow.
Which might look pretty when you first walk in, but when you look on camera, it's ugh, it looks horrible.
Wow.
And you have to be able to know how to, handle it. So the skill level is very important. That's why, with those style shoots, it's one thing for you to see everything in a perfect scenario, but it's not going to help you if you want to know that they know how to, actually shoot real life of not so pretty spots.
So you wow. Let's talk about, and I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but let's talk about the venue, because you said if the venue has green walls and yellow lighting, it's going to affect how you take pictures. So what should couples consider when choosing their venue?
So I think that sometimes venue plays a very important role, but I don't think that should be the end all for everything. So, for example, I've done weddings where it might be at a church and then at a local lodge or something like that, and the bride is really concerned, where are we going to take pictures? We don't have this beautiful garden or beautiful waterfall or, anything like that. And the photographer should be able to handle it. I mean, I have done portraits in a parking lot before with good lighting, and people think it's in this, gorgeous field. All of the field pictures, I've never told anybody this, but I'm known for my gorgeous fields at sunlight, sunset pictures. Every single field I've ever shot in usually is like at the back of a Lowe's parking lot or back of a Walmart or back behind some abandoned lot, because that's where like the untouched grass is. But with the venue, I mean, like, it's great to know that they have good spots like gardens and whatever, but sometimes the budgets don't allow for elaborate venues. I'm sure, as you know, as planning a wedding, weddings are very expensive, and venues really can suck you dry with their costs.
Yeah.
And so I always say, what you're looking for when you're looking for good pictures, I do think it's important to have natural lighting in your getting ready space. There's nothing like window light compared to like the overhead lights, because usually overhead lights have more of a yellowish glow to it, and it really affects your skin color. Window light is really important. If you have window light, you can disguise things to be a lot prettier than they really are. But when it comes to, for portraits, I do think it's important, for you to look and kind of visualize where you would want it. If you're more into country, then you would want to see if there's a field or a barn nearby. If you want more of a classic look, maybe look for columns or a garden. So it depends on what your style is, but I do say that even if you, budget works out that you really can only afford the golf club that doesn't have anything, or, whatever, your photographer should be able to find something, unique, where you might be like, I've had people stand in the parking lot and they're like, Debbie, are you sure? And I'm like, trust me. And then when they get their pictures, they're like, holy cow, you can't even tell it's a parking lot.
That was amazing, Deb.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I think that people forget that budgets are so real, and going through it. I mean, we're both in the same boat now, and you realize like my venue wants like $10,000 for what? And then you're just like, are you kidding me? And then sometimes it doesn't allow it. Sometimes you're going to get stuck with just doing it in the basement of the church or whatever, and you don't want that to mean that, oh, well, I don't get good pictures. You want your photographer to look at them and they know that they got you.
All right, so let's talk about what process does a photographer go through? Well, let me not say a photographer, because I would imagine all are different. But in your professional opinion, what's the process of preparing for a wedding?
Yeah, so it is. It's something that I pretty much the week before a wedding, I'm starting to prepare for the wedding. What I usually do is maybe 2 to 3 weeks before the wedding, maybe even earlier, I sit down with the bride or FaceTime if she's out of state, and we talk about the itinerary. It is so important to know the itinerary as a photographer before your actual wedding day. So you go over the itinerary and you make sure that it's realistic, because you've been to most weddings, but you know that, like, if they're saying that you're only going to get 30 minutes for family portraits, bridal party portraits, and bridal portraits, you know that's, like, not going to happen. So,
right.
Like, going over the timeline with them, helping them kind of, if they only paid for 6 hours of coverage, like, I don't want that to mean that I'm having to leave right when they're getting things done. Like, they pay for 6 hours of coverage, I want to see how we can fit in the amount of activities in that 6 hours. Like, maybe we talk to the DJ and see if we can do cake cutting right after dinner versus, at the very end. Or maybe we can do the first dance as soon as they walk in versus later on. Like, to work with the DJ, and we've talked about this before, Jean, because sometimes, the photographer isn't staying the whole reception, and you don't want that to mean that your bride isn't going to get pictures for that. Definitely go over the itinerary. I also go over shot requests. I don't like it when my brides give me like a Pinterest list that they found where it's like 100 things that they found on Pinterest with like everything that they need to know. I kind of make sure that they know, like, what do you care about? Not what Pinterest cares about, but what do you care about? So maybe that would be their mom putting the veil on, or, something like that. But you want to know what's most important to them. If I need to look for grandma's face during the ceremony, I want to know. If I need to find Uncle Bob somewhere during the wedding day, let me know. So definitely making sure you know what your bride actually wants, because every bride's different. Some brides don't care so much about details. Some brides care more about, like, the genuine moment. I always charge all of my batteries, so I usually bring like 4 to 6 batteries, even though I don't need all of them, and I make sure they're all fully charged just in case anything happens. I bring 3 cameras to a wedding, just in case things happen, because things have happened at weddings. So you always have to make sure you have backup equipment. And if I have a second shooter, I make sure that my second shooter is fully aware of shot list, itinerary, all that stuff. I make sure my cards are all cleared, so I don't have to worry about, my cards being full with other pictures on them. And then I also pack an emergency bag. This is something that a lot of photographers do. In my emergency bag, it has chocolate, Tylenol, toothpaste, bobby pins, hairspray, a granola bar, the addresses, directions to that place in case your phone dies. So basically all the stuff that your bride, your bridal party, or you might need on your wedding day. So it's a lot of prep the week before.
Okay, so let's talk about a shot list. What is a shot list?
So a shot list is basically the bride or the bride and the groom will write down things that they absolutely have to have. So the most popular things that people request is the groom putting his tie on or his bow tie, the mom putting her veil on, his face when they walk down the aisle, their first kiss, like these big moments to them that are really important. You don't want to write down every moment of the day. Like, you don't want to say, me putting my shoe on, me putting my dress up, me putting the veil on, because then it's going to be like a 3-page request, and the photographer is going to be so overwhelmed with, like, the common sense things. But what really works is, like, for me, when I get married or whatever, what would be most important to me is, like, my mom saying a prayer with me. So other brides, that may not even be something that would exist for them. But for me, that would be so important. I would want to make sure my photographer knew that.
So when you're talking about the timeline, well, let's back up a little bit. A lot of weddings that I've done, I've seen 2 things, okay? I've seen the first look, and then we do the wedding, and then the couple does some photos afterwards, right? I've also been in situations where photographers have come up to me with a list of names to call, or they'll just be like, Gene, please, we need everyone from the bride's family outside, or, we need everyone from the groom's family outside. What exactly is going on in that situation?
Yeah, so I don't handle it that way. Every photographer is different, but so what usually happens is you have your prep. That's when the bride and the groom are getting ready, and I do the details. Then if you have the first look, you're going to do the first look, and then you do your ceremony, and then after your ceremony is usually when you do your family portraits. So family portraits happens immediately after the ceremony, usually, for me, because I don't want to have to come find you to call names. I don't want to have to hunt anybody down. So what I usually do is I tell my bride, if your family member is on the formal guest list for, like, pictures, they need to stay in their seats at the ceremony, and then we are going to do pictures immediately afterwards.
So Deb, hold on. You said something very important. You said if your family is on the guest list for family,
so basically, I have my bride write down. Guest list is probably a bad word. I have my bride write down a list of the people that they have to have formal pictures with after the ceremony. So this is usually moms, grandparents, siblings, and then maybe like an aunt, uncle, or a cousin. It's the people that are closest to you, and you have to have that, like, framed formal picture with that person.
Okay.
And we see those after the ceremony.
So this is a document that you're giving the bride to fill out, and you inform her that after the wedding, these people need to go to whatever location you guys designated for family portraits.
Yeah, so I sit down with the bride when I have that meeting a few weeks beforehand, and I say, who do you have to have pictures with after the ceremony? And usually these are the pictures that, like, you would hang up in your wall with, like, your mom. Like, you in your wedding dress and your mom. Or you and your dad in your tux. They give me a list of the most important family members that they have to have, like, a stand and look at me, smile picture. And then after the ceremony, I have those people on the list stay there so that way I don't have to find them at the cocktail hour.
So is this something that you and the bride coordinate together? Because
Yeah.
I mean, at the wedding, I mean, I'll be honest with you. After the ceremony's over, the bride and the groom are walking away. You know what I mean? And so this is
Mhm.
obviously a conversation that happens before the ceremony.
Yes. And they
Okay.
should also be informed to the DJ too. So the DJ knows. So usually right after the ceremony is the cocktail hour. The cocktail hour usually lasts about an hour. So this would be the prime time for those pictures to happen, so you're not missing out of your reception. So usually as soon as, like, we'll do oldest family members first. So we'll do grandma and grandpa, and then we'll say, okay, you can go. And then they can go enjoy the cocktail hour. And then usually the family portraits takes about 20 minutes, and then we can go into bridal photography and then the bride and groom portraits. But the bride and groom, obviously, they have to know beforehand so they can make sure that they stay and family members stay.
Right, and I'm so glad you mentioned about the timeline. I'll tell you why. You know, one of the first questions I ask my couples is, how long do you have the photographer booked? And the reason
Mm-hmm.
why it's important for me to know that is because if you only have the photographer for, 6 hours and the photographer is leaving after dinner, that means, we have to put all of the special moments before open dancing, right? So we have to do the
Right.
special dance. Well, let me not say you have to. Once again, it all depends on what's important to the couple, right? So a lot of couples, they'll say, the cake cutting is important, but it's not important for the photographer to do the bouquet toss or open dancing. In that situation, I at least tell them, well, we should at least designate someone to take pictures. You know what I mean? Even if it's a family
Right.
member or something like that. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is very important. And of course, weddings run late, and I've had to tell photographers all the time, listen, I know you're leaving at a certain amount of time, but we're going to cut the cake. Can you stay a few minutes? And most of the time, there's not an issue with that. But I think it is important that, especially for the entertainer, that we know when the photographer
Mm-hmm.
is scheduled to leave.
And that's why I think it's so important to talk to your bride and grooms about what's important to them beforehand, because I've had some brides that all that stuff is super important, so then I know, hey, maybe we don't need as much time for prep, and let's add some more time to reception.
Mm.
So I'll say, maybe you only need 30 minutes of prep time, and then let's add 2 hours of that down to the end at your reception, and that way you can get all of those events. And that's why I always like to make sure I email my DJs that I'm working with beforehand and say, hey, this is my itinerary. I'm planning on leaving at 9. Let's work together to try to make sure this stuff stays on time, and try to get things moving during the reception to make sure that they get their bouquet toss. I am a little different than other photographers. I have stayed late to many, many, many weddings with no problem. I have no issue. I know that things run late. I know that sometimes we're totally behind and we haven't even cut the cake yet, and I'm supposed to have been gone by now. But that's why I think communication is so well, and I think that your bride and groom appreciate it so much at the end of the day. If I stay an extra hour and then they realize it, a lot of times they'll say, hey, I'm going to send you an invoice for that last hour that you gave us. But if they don't, I know that they're still very appreciative of it, and then they're going to refer me to more people. But I would never expect that from other vendors. I would never have a bride and groom expect it from somebody. But I do think that it's so helpful when you have the DJ and the photographer working together. I'm constantly talking to my DJs like, hey, we're a little running late. How about you try to get people, over this direction? Or, hey, can you get people, if we missed a group, like if we missed the groomsmen whole all in one picture, I'll say, hey, can you call all the groomsmen on the dance floor for me so I can at least get one shot of them on the floor together? And that it really just helps the timeline go a lot more smoothly when you have two people at it.
I definitely agree. One of the biggest pet peeves I have, I don't want to say it's a pet peeve, but it's so important that the DJ know what's going on, right? So a lot of times, I'll like the couple is gone, right? And everybody's looking like, where did they go? And the photographer took them out for sunset photos, and they didn't tell anybody Like, we're
Right.
going out for
Right.
sunset photos and people are looking around for them. So I think it's so important that
And I actually
vendors...
remember you telling me that, and I actually kind of made sure, now I make it a point, I actually tell my other photographer friends, like, most bride and grooms want to go out for sunset pictures, but now I tell the DJ, hey, do you think now is a good time for them to escape for 15 minutes? Like, has everybody been served yet? Like, because sometimes if people haven't been finished, people haven't even finished eating yet, that's when I say, let's go escape really quick. So no one's going to miss you because they're eating food still.
Exactly. And you know what? That's why I think it's great for other vendors to work together with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember, when I invited you out to one of the weddings I did, and you were like, Gene, during the first dance, you don't want to have these strobe lights going on because you can't edit those out of the photos. And, that's, as an entertainer...
Please teach your DJs that, too.
Yeah. No, I was just, as a DJ, that's not something... Because I'm not in your world, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's not something I'm thinking about. I'm just like, yeah, the bride and groom's coming in. Like, and I'll tell you something else. And I'm so fortunate to have you not only as a fellow vendor, but as a friend, right? Is sometimes right before the first dance, someone from the venue will go and turn the lights off. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, photographers hate that, right? Like, they're like, why are the lights off? But, the venue doesn't know that. You see what I'm saying? And nobody is really communicating that to them. So,
And it means so much even when the venue coordinator comes to me and say, hey, is this light okay? I mean, I should be able to handle all lighting situations, but it is just so nice when people say, hey, is it cool if we dim them a little bit before we turn them all the way off? Or, hey, are these purple lights going to be crazy for you? And, that's why I always tell bride and grooms also, like, when you pick your up lighting and when you pick your, colors and stuff on your DJ, make sure you tell them, like, I don't want these colors during my first dance. I don't want, disco lights on my face while I have my, first dance. But these are all things that, and I never would have thought to tell the DJ before I take my bride and groom out for sunset pictures. And now I'm like, okay, before I even go out there, I need to head right to my DJ booth and say, hey, is this now a good time for us? And it just worked out so much better then.
Yeah, I remember I was doing a wedding and a photographer came up to me and she was like sometimes I'll notice the photographers while cocktail hour is going on, after they're done with the family photos, they'll come in and just take pictures of the venue, right? And the photographer was like, oh, can you turn these up lights off? And, that was a little bit weird to me. I'm like, why? Like, I had to literally go over and unplug like 12 up lights. And it would have been better if I would have known ahead of time that she was going to be doing that, right? And so now...
And that's why I've also told DJs, like, early on in the day during prep, if the reception's already set up, I'll go over to reception space and just, before you plug in all of your lights or before you plug in all your extra speakers, do you mind if I just take pictures of the room really quick? Because then I'm getting it without all of the extra distractions in the background.
Awesome. So that's another topic for another show. I guess photographers and DJs working with vendors. But you also said something that was very intriguing to me. You said prep time, right? And like, because like I've never planned a wedding before, my own anyway, right? Like when you say prep time, I'm thinking like, okay, that's when the couple is getting ready, obviously, right? And that is something that they need to consider when hiring their when hiring their photographer, and the time that's allotted for that, correct?
Right. Yes.
And
so that's, just definitely you need to make sure that if they want all of their hair and makeup covered, if they want all of their whole getting ready covered, you need to know that. But most brides and grooms just kind of want the final basic details covered, like getting the dress put on, the veil put on, final touches on your makeup, him putting his jacket on. Like, you don't have to cover them from when they're in their shorts and flip-flops, sitting around eating pizza before they start getting ready.
Right, so you'll come in after they're like almost done with the prep.
Yeah, so sometimes the brides and grooms do want me there pretty early on, so that way I'm like getting it when they're fresh-faced and just now getting hair and makeup started. Usually I don't take too many pictures of when they're like that because they're not usually the most flattering. are just kind of sitting there with their stuff getting ready. So that's when I would usually go around and capture, like, the ceremony space set up before people sit down, the reception space set up before people, come in and ruin it. I would get that, and then I would come in and get the pictures of them as they're starting to be a little bit more presentable.
All right, so now let's talk about a process that I thought was completely amazing, that I was completely baffled about, is, for DJs, after the wedding is done, like, we're done. Like, we go home, we hug, thank you so much. But for a photographer, your job doesn't end after the wedding, right?
It just starts.
It's just getting started. Oh my gosh. So
like the wedding is the easy part.
Wow. So let's talk about the process that you go through after the wedding.
Yeah, so I come home. I usually sit on the couch and feel dead for a while. And then, so what I do first is I back up my images. That means that I kind of just put my cards in one other spot, like my external hard drive, cloud, whatever it may be, just so in case I were then to lose the card or drop the card in water or whatever, my images are already in one other place. Then I import them into my computer, and I go through them, and I do something called culling. So basically that means that I go through and I select the images that I actually want to edit. So that means I'm going to throw out the light testing shots. I'm going to throw out the shots where somebody's picking at themselves. I'm throwing away all the definite no's, and then I'm going to import the ones that I actually want to edit. So once I import all the ones that I want to edit, then I start editing them.
So Deb, real quick. So how many pictures on an average would you say you take at a wedding?
Oh, gosh. Okay, so I'm a horrible example because I completely overshoot. So this may not be as many as other photographers will take. On average, if I do an 8-hour wedding day, we're looking at, oh God, this is going to sound so bad. I probably am looking at taking 3,000 to 6,000 pictures.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
On average, though, I do feel like it's around that 3,000 mark, though.
And then how many photos do you end up
actually
editing?
Deliver?
Yeah.
The final product for an 8-hour wedding day that I actually deliver, I'm actually okay, these are definites for me, probably between 800 and 1,200, but I guarantee 700 to 900.
Okay. All right. So back to the process. You get home, you relax, you back up the photos, and then what?
Then I import them into my computer after I cull through them and get rid of the ones that I don't want. And then I start editing them. And you can do where you you make an edit and then you set it to more than one photo. But if you think about it, one edit might work on one photo and then it may not work on another photo. So you have to go through, brighten them, maybe add a little bit of color. Everybody has their own style. Some photographers are more warm. Some photographers are more saturated. Some photographers are more bright. Some are more dark. Just kind of depends on what their creative style is. I edit them. What'd you say?
No, that's very interesting. You said creative style.
So my style is very warm and kind of almost a moody edit. So some photographers are super, super bright and overexposed. I'm a little bit more underexposed, and definitely what stands out for my work is warmth. So I do a lot of super glowy white, super beachy, warm, Cali type tones over minty greens and super overexposed atmospheres. So after you edit all of the pictures, which takes a good amount of time, you want to, I am a little different than some photographers. I don't believe in heavy Photoshop, so I will remove blemishes, etc. But because I have so much emphasis on empowerment and self-esteem, I do not make them skinnier. I don't, remove I don't drop 20 pounds off your waist or anything like that. I keep my editing pretty realistic just because of my own morals. So I don't have to do anything too crazy with that. And then after all the pictures are edited, I export them and I put them in a gallery, which I think we're gonna go over soon too. And then I upload them into the gallery, which takes a few more hours, and then I send it off to my clients.
Okay, so let's talk about editing a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, let's go deeper into the editing. So, is editing a skill?
Yes, and it's something that takes a long time. Like, I've been editing for, like I said, like 8 years now, and I still will be like, oh, I didn't know I could do that on Lightroom. Like, I'm always learning new tricks or new, tools that I could use to edit the pictures.
And I've heard of photographers sending their pictures to someone else to edit.
Yeah, so some photographers outsource their editing. That means that there's some people that their main job is to edit. So they find out what their style is, and they have kind of a preset made off of what that photographer edits like, and then they edit the pictures for that photographer. Some people do this if they just don't want to spend the time editing. Some people do this because they would rather have, if they're drowning in work, they want somebody else to edit them for them. For the various different reasons. I don't. I'm a little too picky, so I like editing my own work versus having somebody edit it for me. But you can, outsource, if, let's say, I had to do something crazy, like remove somebody out of, a group picture. Like, somebody gets a divorce, and I have to, remove that uncle out of the picture. I probably would send it out to somebody else to do it for me.
And so, if you're only taking photos and somebody else is editing, should the photographer let the couple know that? Is that important?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's always important to know who's going to handle your pictures. I don't think many bride and grooms care as long as they get their pictures, but I think it is important to know, what editing should I be expecting? Is this the style that's going to be in all of the pictures? You do a lot of black and white? How long is it going to take for my pictures to get back? I think those are all important questions to ask.
Okay, so what separates one photographer from another? Is it the actual pictures, or is it the editing, or is it both?
I think it's both. So for me, you've been following my work for a while now. You know that I do a lot of candid, genuine emotion, action shots in my pictures. I don't do a lot of face the camera and stare at me for the hour. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which it's totally nothing wrong with that. It's just that that's not my style. So I think that how you're setting up the shot, your composition, the emotion you're capturing, obviously is going to make you different from another photographer. Everybody sees things differently. I might see one that, differently than another photographer. But it's also about your editing. I mean, I'm sure you see so many photographers on your page and you realize that some are brighter, some are darker, some are warmer, some have different colored greens, some have more black and white. I mean, it really just comes down to the style of the photographer.
So I'm glad you cleared that up. I had another question about editing. It completely slipped my mind. Okay, so this is it. A lot of couples, I'm not even going to talk about couples. I'm just going to talk about myself, okay?
Yes.
I've hired you for, I don't know, 3 or 4 jobs now. But,
right.
I would imagine someone that's never hired a photographer, when they're looking at these pictures, and you're right, you can be scrolling through Instagram and see tons and tons of photos, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
break down for me the different types of photos, right? So you said a still shot, natural moving shot.
Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a classic look where it's a lot of full body, stare at me, more classic poses, like holding hands, at big sceneries, like big houses in the background. I think that there's also a documentary style, which I absolutely adore. Basically, that's more where I'm not posing you guys. I'm just going to let you guys kind of interact and give you more direction. Like, let's go to a coffee shop and you guys drink coffee and talk and we're going to hang out. And I'm going to capture you while you do that, but it's more in a hidden way. And it ends up capturing more of, like, what actually happened.
It's more natural.
And then,
it's more natural.
Yes, more natural. So some bride and grooms love that because it's easier on them. It's less stress. They kind of just get the more of, like, what's really happening for them. And then you also have bride and grooms who are like, no thanks. Can you tell me what to do? And I want to look at the camera. And that's okay. It just comes down to kind of like what the bride and groom feel more comfortable with.
So when the bride and groom ask you to tell us what to do, what style of shoot is that? Is that like because you're setting up that scene, correct?
Yes. So I would say kind of like a class. I mean, I'm sure there's a better word for it, but I would say just more of a classic look to it, where it's just more of your basic shot. And then some people, they like more of a romantic style. So it's a lot more of like kissing and head on shoulders and, the ring around his neck, like those kind of things.
So, as a photographer, is there a style that you prefer or that you feel that you shoot really well in? Other than, because it almost sounds like, as a DJ, you can do clubs, you can do radio.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. So I think that it comes down to personal preference. I mean, for you, yes, what was for your wedding? I mean, you obviously would have one style of a DJ over the other, right? But that doesn't mean the other DJ would suck. It just means that that's more of the style what you're looking for. So for me personally, I would prefer more of a documentary, genuine, like just capture me and my man laughing and loving each other. But I'm sure that Devin, it's so weird to say fiance, but my fiance, like, he probably would feel so awkward, like, having somebody, like, capture us on the couch in our home. And he probably wouldn't be really relaxed. He probably would prefer to have somebody say, okay, put your hand here, look over this way.
So with that being said, and I'm so glad you brought that up, if you're doing engagement photos, which I think is an important process for a photographer to get to know the couple, I would imagine, you have, some people are camera shy, some people don't like to be in the camera. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think it's always important when you talk to what works for your bride and your groom. I think that some grooms hate pictures. My man is an example for that one. Everyone's always telling me, how come you guys don't have pictures together? Because he hates pictures. And I think that stuff is something to consider when you're hiring a photographer. You want to make sure that style works for him too. But I think that some people that are really self-conscious, documentary or lifestyle photography might be a little harder for them because they're just going to be captured in their natural environment. They're not going to be able to stand up, suck it in, look over a certain shoulder, that kind of thing.
All right. So back to the process that you go through after a wedding. So once you're done getting the photos that you want to edit, then you start editing them and then you send them to the couple. How long does that typically take?
Yeah, so it depends on the season. For example, like my weddings that I had at the beginning of September, which is kind of like the beginning of the rush, I feel like, for me at least, I was giving weddings back to them within 2 weeks. I actually had 2 weddings within a 2-week period, and they both got them back within 2 weeks. However, then I had weddings where I had 4 in the fall back to back, and they took about more 3 weeks. I guarantee 4 to 6 weeks for weddings, but I've never actually taken that long. But I always would rather say, it's like the pizza delivery system. You would rather stay a longer time than you actually are going to take.
I agree. So while preparing for this interview, Jen had brought up, you should ask Deb about the different options you offer for photos. So, but before we get into that, I've seen some couples do And I've seen you do this too, as what, like, it's almost like a sneak peek,
Yes.
right? And what's the idea behind that?
Okay, so obviously, like, I'm sure you guys have all, because the fact that you guys are my clients, like, I feel like you also can experience this. After you get the pictures, of course you're like, okay, so did they turn out okay? Like, I'm
Right,
sure
you're
that, like,
itching. You
Jen
can't
immediately
wait. I
was
want
like,
the pictures. I want you. You want them like right then
yeah,
and
I'm sure
there.
Jen immediately was like, within 2 days, like, okay, so, like, did they look okay? Like, you know. So I think that the sneak peek for a client's perspective is kind of like the excitement, like, oh, I got to see one, and then you're like, you get to share it with your friends, like, oh, we did engagement pictures this weekend. Here's you know, what happened, or here's like a little sneak peek or a preview of it. For my perspective, while that is great that my clients get to see them, I could also text those sneak peeks to them, but it's kind of like getting their family and friends excited about it too. So it's like, when I tag you guys, you know, if I were to do engagement pictures for you guys, like, I would tag you guys in the picture, and then all your friends and family are like, oh my gosh, so nice to see these, right? And that's a good move on my business, because I know everybody is, like, staying tuned to my page, liking my page, waiting for me to send more out, and it's also giving me more material to showcase my portfolio and my style at the same time.
Awesome. I like that. And I gotta tell
Yeah.
you, for me and Jen, it was definitely. I mean, you were the first photographer to take photos of us together, and right before we went on our summer vacation, and it was so exciting getting the photos. It really
Yeah,
was.
absolutely. I mean, that's something that, like, you're looking forward to, and, like, it's a little something that you can share with family and friends too. So the sneak peeks, I think, are so important. And people, they're brutal with their sneak peeks. I mean, they're texting me when I'm driving home from the shoot, like asking for a sneak peek. So I do try to give a sneak peek within like the next 2 days or so. During busy season, when I was shooting like 20 sessions a week, it was more like a week before you saw a sneak peek for some of my people. But I really do try to get my sneak peek out as fast as you can, because I know you guys are like anxiously waiting. And when I've gotten headshots done before, I felt the same pain. Like, I didn't get a sneak peek from my headshots for like 3 weeks, and I was dying. I was like,
Right.
what in the world? Like, did they look horrible? Did I do awful? Like, did I have weird hair? Like, you know, it just was like nerve-wracking.
So it's important for the couple to kind of have a realistic expectation on when they're gonna get their photos.
Yeah, so I always tell, because people, honestly, and I'm sure you have the same thing, people do not read their contracts. People don't read the contracts. So if you're a client out there, make sure you read your contract, because like, people do not read their contract, and then all of the information is in that contract. So it'll say, you're going to get your pictures within 4 weeks of your session date. But I always tell my clients, and I actually have these nice little cards now that I give my clients at the end of the session. So if we ever work together again, you'll see one of them. But it's a nice little card, and it says, what happens now? And basically on this card, it talks about, when are you going to see a sneak peek? When are you going to get your pictures back? Where are you going to see your pictures? Like my Instagram, my Facebook, my website, that kind of thing. And then it's going to talk about, when you get your pictures back, how do you download them? Where do you download them to? Where should I order prints from? So it goes over all of those questions that completely, like, you either didn't read or you forgot already. So you kind of have something to go home and answer all those questions for you.
I love that, Deb. I might have to jack that from you.
I know, yeah, it's super, super awesome.
What happens now cards? That is awesome, because
if you think about it, even you and Jen, like, you probably had like 12 questions. Like, right after you left your shoot, you're like, where do I order these from? How do I download them? What do I do? And you forget all that stuff. So this is a nice little, like, it's got my picture, like a little collage of pictures on the front. It's big. It's not going to be lost. And it's thick. It's not going to be ripped easily. And got all the information for you on it.
I love it. Love it. Okay, so what should a couple expect on their wedding day?
So I think that it's so important to not just be a photographer, and I truly believe this. I am not a photographer. I am your extra bridesmaid. I am your extra mama. I am your extra wedding planner. I am your extra photographer. I am basically your person all day long. And that's why I said back before that personality is so important, because you can imagine if Jen is stuck with me all day long, I hope that she would like me. Because if I'm going to be with you all day, like, I need you to, like, make sure we're on the same page. So that's why I always say that you should expect your photographer to not just take pictures. We have all the situations. I have curled hair before for bridesmaids. I have fixed hair for my bride. I have applied false eyelashes for the first time in my life on a bride. I have steamed wedding dresses. I have went to the drugstore and bought chocolate for a bride before who was really cranky. I have bought water bottles for people. I have even gone through McDonald's drive-thru in between the prep and the ceremony for my bridesmaids. I guess you shouldn't expect that, but I feel like that's something that you should, like, look forward to from your photographer, that, like, they're there to help you, not just take pictures. Because I'm not going to be behind a camera taking a picture of every second of your day. I mean, that would be totally overkill. Like, I want to be busy. I want to be helpful for you. If your dress gets snagged, no worries. We're going to fix it. You know, like, you should expect your photographer also to keep you on track of time. Some coordinators are great about this. Some coordinators are not so great about this. Like, I'm going to tell you, we have 20 minutes before the ceremony starts, so we probably should get dressed. You know, I'm going to tell you, your groom is totally ready when he's really not, and then I'm going to go over to the groom's room and tell him, you need to put your clothes on. Like, you know, like, you should be that person that's kind of handling the issues without your bride knowing it's an issue. I had a wedding. My bride might be listening to this, Brittany. She never knew that one of her groomsmen was not there at the hotel for prep until probably weeks afterwards. He had a tux disaster and picked up the wrong tux, and he wasn't in any of the prep pictures or any of the pictures beforehand because he was handling a tux disaster. So it's one of those things where you just try to, like, avoid those conflicts, and you just try to fix the issues before they actually happen.
And I think that goes a long way with you building a relationship with your couples, not
absolutely. I mean, you know, and you know this, I mean, all of my clients have turned into friends. Like, I get invited to my clients' kids' piano recitals, soccer games. I get invited to my bride's showers. One of my brides has turned into one of my best friends. Like, and she's just one of my brides, and we turned into, like, the best of friends. I have couples that go on double dates with me and mine. Like, you know, it's great having that relationship because they expect you to be there for them more than just a photographer, but also they treat you like a human, not just a business, which is so, so awesome when they look at you as an actual person versus just some machine that's taking pictures for them.
I agree. So listen, we're almost at, we're a little over an hour, so I want to be respectful of your time, right? But two questions just popped in my head, and I've got to tell you, just as a groom, you know, this platform has helped me out so much. Just having this hour conversation with you, I'm gonna go and talk to Jen, and, like, I've learned so much already, and I wish I wish we had more time, and I'm gonna have to get you back on again because we're not gonna be able to get to all the questions, right? But two things that popped in my head. The best time to take pictures and makeup artists, okay? And the reason why I say this is the bride, like I'm not a girl and I'm not girly, and so I don't know anything about makeup and stuff like that, okay? But I have noticed that the bride does her makeup before the ceremony, right? If it's in the summertime, okay? If it's in the summertime, her makeup is going to wear off, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so after the ceremony, she's going to have to take these family photos. So does she have to redo her makeup before then?
So what I usually have done in the past is we bring touch-ups. So we bring, like, a lip, or we bring, like, mascara or whatever. But airbrush makeup doesn't come off as easily, is what I've noticed from my salon friends. If they do airbrush makeup, it tends to stick to the face. It's actually waterproof. So when you're getting sweaty and stuff, it'll actually stay put. versus like more like foundation and stuff that sometimes gets kind of nasty after they get a little sweaty. But airbrush makeup does a lot better. So I always ask, like, you know, you can always ask your salon people that, hey, do you guys offer you know, airbrush makeup? But I also will bring a portable fan, like one of those little small ones, and I literally will just run around. Or I'll have my assistant or my intern or my second shooter or whoever, or one of the bridesmaids literally just carry the fan and just keep it on her face.
Got you. And so obviously a makeup artist is important, obviously, because...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. You can totally tell, like, you know, like, I've had a lot of brides with bridesmaids do their makeup and stuff, and they still look amazing. I just always say just make sure that you know what you're putting on, and you try it. Trials are so important. You know, I always say when you have your engagement session, see if you can schedule your hair and makeup trial on the same day, because then you can see what the makeup and hair looks like on camera versus just in real life. So it's great when we can combine the two, because then you can kind of see, ooh, I do not like my hair like that in pictures, and then you can know not to do something differently for your actual day.
Okay. All right, Deb. So 2 more questions, and then we're gonna wrap this up, and I gotta get you back because we only got halfway through the questions. And
I know, yeah, we talked a lot, yeah.
Yeah, this has been amazing. All right, so let's talk about the different. Actually, I'm gonna try to fit 3 questions in here, right? So what's the biggest misconceptions that brides have when hiring you, or photographer?
I think price. A lot of people don't understand, and like I said, as a bride myself now, it's like, oh, holy cow, like, oh my god, like that's like literally a down payment on a house and all this stuff. But I think price. A lot of brides don't really know how expensive it is, because if you think about it, like, it's not just the 8 hours of coverage. It's all the stuff beforehand and the week after that I'm spending on your pictures. So when you break it down per hour, you're really hardly making anything per hour, just because of, you know, all the things. Plus, I always like to say, I'm not just giving you a good, I'm also giving you a service. Like, I'm giving you a service and a good. So it's not like you're just paying for some 4x6 prints. You're paying for the art, you're paying for the work, you're paying for, you know, all the effort that it takes afterward. I mean, you're paying for so much more. Plus, I always say, like, and like I said, I know price is hard, but photos are the only thing that you're going to go home with. Your cake's not going to go home with you. Your party's not going to go home with you. Your food's not going to go home with you. The only thing that you get to have after the wedding is pictures.
I agree. And you know,
so it's so important to maybe invest more in photography over something that maybe, like, the donut booth may not be as important.
Right. So, you know, I tell you, I always tell my couples, you know, the one thing that will back up the timeline is the photos, but you don't want to rush the photos, right?
Yeah.
It's the like, you know, I've seen photographers working under pressure of time, and listen, I'll tell you, like, I'm not a photographer, but as a DJ, if they're rushing me, come on, Gene, we got to get everybody lined up, and you got to go through it, and you know, I might mess up a name. That's not something I can go back and fix. Or we might forget
to take a certain picture.
Exactly, or I might forget to make an important announcement because I'm being rushed. Like, I hate being rushed. That's why I get to the venue so early and I'm set up and I go over my script and I'm well prepared and ready to rock and roll. And like, I've seen photographers, you know, the venue manager or the planner is rushing them. They're like, oh my gosh, we're running 30 minutes behind time. We got to go. And I can see not the expression on their face, and they're not putting forth their best effort now because they're under the timeline. And then as soon as they're done with the photos, they're running into the reception area, right? Which is a whole different conversation, because taking pictures outside and then going inside the venue is different. You got to put your bags down. You got to get your lighting set up.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Right. So I'm super glad you mentioned that. All right. So let's talk about what are the different options for couples to get their photos.
Yeah, so some photographers offer their images on flash drives, but that method is kind of getting outdated. A lot of people don't do that anymore because if you think about it, flash drives break and flash drives get lost. When I used to do flash drives, every single person lost their flash drives, and I was constantly having to replace them. So now what I do, and you've experienced this, and you can kind of give me your feedback as a client. You get a gallery. So I send you a link, and you have access to this link for 10 years, and you can download them as many times as you want. You can share them online. You can share them with people. You can favorite your pictures. It gets broken down into different categories, from prep, ceremony, whatever. And then you also have an app where you can have all of your galleries in one place. So if you do an engagement session with me, if you do a wedding, for you, your headshot session, your couples pictures, like they would all be in that one app.
Yeah.
So I think it's just so much better than having a tangible item that could get broken.
So I tell you what, I love it, Deb. Right? You did my headshots, and I just recently changed a photo on my business card. And what I did was I was like, man, where are my pictures? And I just went to the Pass app, loaded it up, and boom, there it was. You know,
Yep, that's awesome.
Yeah, from the company photos to my headshots to.
And the good thing about that gallery is that you can order prints through the gallery, like where you just literally click on the plus sign and you can order prints through it.
I didn't know you could do that.
Or you can download them and order them yourself.
I didn't know you could do that.
Yes. So if you push the plus sign, there's an option that says add to cart, and then it'll bring up all the different sizes that you can order.
Wow. That's pretty dope. That's dope. So yeah, I think it's amazing, and I was able to give the computer to wifey, and I let her pick the photo that she thought would be best on the business card. So it worked out pretty good. So is that your method? Is doing the gallery and allowing? See, because this is another thing, right? When we were out shopping for photographers, okay. One thing I was completely oblivious to is like, okay, we paid the photographer for the photos, but now what about the prints? It was like, the prints, oh yeah. So a couple can either decide to get the photos printed themselves, or is that a service you offer as well?
Yeah, so I always, and I think we actually spoke about this before, you can absolutely order prints through me. But what I have found, and I'm so honest with my brides. I mean, like I've even told you guys, like so many different, like I could customize whatever for you guys. But like I always think that it's cheaper for my clients that they download them and they can order them through galleries, through labs that I, recommend, than paying for me. Because what happens is, if you guys pay for a print through me, I'm totally happy to order them for you, but it's going to come from a professional photo lab, and I'm going to charge something for the time that it takes for me to order all the pictures, whatever. It ends up being more expensive versus where you guys can have access to them whenever you want, download them, and then order the prints yourself. Now, some photographer models are different, which you always should make sure you know, is you pay the fee for the work and the time, but you don't receive digitals or prints with that cost.
Really?
You have to order the print separately, and you have to order the files separately. Because, so you just always want to make sure that you're either, if that's what the service that you're looking for, like if you want more of, high luxurious prints and just a few digitals, or if you want, like, all the digitals.
All right, Deb, listen, I am so grateful that you have come into my life, and you have definitely helped me in my career. You have been a good friend. You're an amazing photographer. You're the first interview for the podcast. You know what I mean?
I know, it's awesome, and same to you. I think that we both have worked together really well.
Yeah, I mean that's how much I think of you. Our second interview, we're definitely gonna start with the whole lighting situation, because I know that's important. Mm-hmm. So in closing, where can they find you? If somebody wants to book you, what's the process?
So I am in several different places. My website is www.debbieringel.com. You can find my investment information, about me, my portfolios, all that stuff on my website. You can also contact me through the website. I'm also on Instagram at Debbie Ringel and Boudoir by Debbie Ringel. And I'm also on Facebook at Debbie Ringel Photography and Boudoir by Debbie Ringel. So anywhere you are, you can find me, and I'm happy to work with anybody.